So this concept of articulating a value of nature and linking it to the values within human society is something that's also recognized by the next speaker, Anders Wijkman, who has written the book Bankrupting Nature. He is the chair of the Swedish Association of Recycling Industries, and he compliments Raworth by asking what should be the purpose of the economy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Succeeding Kate, I can tell you that she has covered some of the ground that I was supposed to cover, so I'm very happy about that. Let me bring you back to 1999, the years immediately after the downfall of the Berlin Wall. Francis Fukuyama, an American historian, read a much attention book, The End of History, in which he said, what we are witnessing is not only the end of the Cold War, we are witnessing the end of history. And from now on, Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government. Today, of course, we know that he was wrong. History has not ended. On the contrary, the world is full of tensions and contradictions related to the shortcomings of the political system and of the economy. And as part of it, of course, the enormous growth over the last 20 to 25 years of global corporations. Of the 100 largest economic entities in this world, 39 are nations and 61 are corporations. The economic model that served us so well in the Western world during the 20th century is increasingly questioned for a number of reasons. Many countries of today experience rising inequalities and unemployment rates that were unthinkable just a few years ago. One particular challenge that we talk very little about is the digitalization of the economy. Up till now, new technology was always seen as a blessing, as a benefit to society. But the IT revolution seems to eliminate jobs at a great speed, both at the factory floor and among white-collar workers. And markets don't seem to be able to offer new jobs at a comparable rate. There is a recent book in America, Race Against the Machine, which shows this very convincingly. So the risk that jobless growth is becoming reality, at least in parts of the world, is real indeed. The financial system is a problem of its own. In spite of the fact that we are awash in money and in new money, investments in the real economy, and in particular in sustainability, is too low. Larry Summers, of all people, made some comments the other day implying that we need a new economic logic. Most of the debate related to the ecology and economy is focusing on climate change. And of course, it's a very serious problem. But like Kate said, this is just one of the challenges. There is a very intricate interplay between the atmosphere and the biosphere, between the climate system, the ecosystems on land, and the oceans. And unless we really factor that in and realize that the main challenge is really the whole, how to manage the planet as a system, we are not going to make it. And as was said, together with Johan Rockström, I've written a book recently. The title is Bankrupting Nature. And that nature is going bankrupt is indeed a risk. So what we have to challenge is the way society is organized in terms of production and consumption, the metabolism of the whole system. And given all these challenges, it's no wonder that people increasingly ask, what is really the purpose of the economy? The role of business is, of course, crucial. Private business make up more than 75% of value added in the US and organizes more than 80% of the labor. So a greening of the economy is not possible without a greening of the private sector. And a crucial problem is the huge subsidy provided by nature to private companies. My friend Pavan Sukhdev calculates that the negative externalities of the 3,000 biggest companies in the world exceed $2 trillion a year. There are, in fact, very few products in the marketplace whose price exceed the true costs of production. This situation can simply not continue. So how do we then deal with the problems? Well, both at global and national levels, we have a lot of policymakers trying to put in place various policy instruments to curb pollution and to deal with sustainability. But success, as we know, is very limited so far. The resistance from part of the business community and from also some political forces is very fierce. The latest example is COP19 in Warsaw, which experienced a further watering down of a possible climate agreement. The efforts to regulate externalities and to stop subsidizing nature must, of course, continue. But parallel to that, and that's why we are gathered here today, we need other efforts, like rethinking company law. A serious problem, both for politicians and companies, is that conventional economics leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to dealing with sustainability. There are serious gaps, ladies and gentlemen, in the theory and consequently how economists, mainstream economists, are trained. Notable examples are the notion that different resources are easily substitutable. But, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot eat money. The failure so far to assign a value to biodiversity and ecosystem services. The failure to deal with non-linear phenomena like tipping points. The way we discount the future values. The notion that material growth can continue indefinitely. The dominating practice to equal GDP growth with rising prosperity. The traditional cost-benefit analysis, which does a poor job in terms of assessing the true costs of economic activities. Add to that the challenge of technology. I'm not a Luddite, but job creation is going to be a serious problem in the future. The suggestion to broaden the objectives of the company law are, of course, very, very good. The narrow objectives of today makes it difficult for enlightened business leaders to move in the right direction. And for heaven's sake, what is a shareholder today? 30 years ago, the average stock on the New York Stock Exchange was kept for 7 years. Today, for a few weeks. A reference to sustainable development in the revised company law would, of course, make sense. But something like this will not provide a magic, because we still have a lot of challenges in terms of how sustainability is defined and how to operationalize both at macro and micro level. One key prerequisite for companies to be more responsible will be to account for the negative externalities that they produce. This is the first step, and some companies are doing that. Most of them are companies who are not listed, and I think this is a very important point. Listed companies find it much more difficult. I'm on the board of a major chemical company, and I can tell you, at the recent board meeting, the discussion was, we know we should go for non-fossil resources in the future. But Wall Street and our shareholders oblige us now to go for fracking. And that's a fact of life. So to account for these externalities is a first step. But if other companies don't do the same, and if these external costs are not internalized by some formula, it's going to be very difficult for individual companies. So I think this process is going to be very, very difficult and very, very challenging. But to start mapping these costs, to disclose them, and put pressure on policymakers and on other companies is very, very important. Two particular sectors outside manufacturing are of particular interest: finance and advertising. And I don't have time to go into that, but I can tell you that one of the major problems with the financial sector today is that they favor short-term returns versus long-term returns, in a way that sustainability investments are increasingly difficult to obtain. Advertising, as you know, is sort of more or less forcing people to buy a lot of things all the time, new products, new models, instead of focusing on a more sustainable model, a performance economy. So a revision of the company law is very important, but I think it has to be accompanied with a new logic within the economy. Because otherwise, I think companies will work within an environment that is very, very constrained. And let me just finally tell you which are the main characteristics of the new economy. We have to go from GDP growth to beyond GDP and focus on very succinct welfare goals. We have to exchange short-termism for long-termism. We have to go from maximization of returns to safeguarding long-term income. We have to go from shareholder value to stakeholder value. We have to go from extraction of natural resources to the management of natural resources. We have to go from short-life products to product life extension and what my friend Walter Stahel calls the performance economy. And this means going from linear flows of material to circular flows of material. We have to look for efficient, multi-dimensional efficiency instead of only efficiency in monetary terms. And finally, we have to reconcile micro-rationality and macro-rationality. If this will happen, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a chance to move society towards sustainability. But as you can see, it's a very complex issue, and we need to work on a number of parallel fronts at the same time. Thank you very much.